Hi everyone, welcome back to our HISTO-PH family, where forgotten Filipino history finally comes alive. Today, we're diving deep into the Sultanates of Mindanao and Sulu, Islamic kingdoms of ancient Philippines. A story that rewrites everything we thought we knew about our beginnings. In the southern Philippines, powerful Islamic sultanates ruled over vast territories long before Spanish colonization. These were sophisticated monarchies with royal courts, written law codes, international diplomatic relations, and military forces that successfully resisted colonial powers for centuries. The Sultanates of Sulu and Maguindanao were genuine Islamic kingdoms that connected the Philippines to the broader Islamic world, stretching from Arabia to Indonesia. The arrival of Islam in the Philippines. Islam reached the Philippine archipelago gradually, through trade networks that had connected Southeast Asia with the Middle East since the 7th century. Arab, Persian, Indian, and Malay Muslim merchants sailed monsoon winds linking ports from the Middle East to China, bringing not just goods, but religious ideas and cultural practices. The first documented Islamic missionary to the Philippines was Karim ul-Makhdum, a Sunni Sufi scholar from Mecca who arrived in Sulu in 1380 CE. He was not a conqueror, but a religious scholar and trader who brought spiritual teachings and sacred texts. Karim ul-Makhdum established the first mosque in the Philippines in Tubig Indagan in Simunul, which became known as the Sheikh Karim al-Makhdum Mosque. This structure marked the beginning of Islamic transformation in the southern Philippines. Before establishing the mosque in Sulu, Karim ul-Makhdum had arrived in Malacca, where he practiced medicine and preached Islam, converting many inhabitants, including the ruler of Malacca. He preached the Ash'ari Aqidah theological creed and Shafi'i school of Islamic law, as well as the Qadiriyya Sufi order. His daughter, Putri Paramaisuli, would later marry Sharif Marjan, and their descendants would become important figures in Maguindanao's royal lineage. The spread of Islam accelerated in the 15th century when more Arab missionaries and traders arrived. Local rulers saw in Islam not just a religion, but a sophisticated system of law, governance, and international connection. Converting to Islam meant joining a vast network of Muslim kingdoms from Morocco to Indonesia, gaining access to established trade routes, diplomatic recognition, and codified legal systems that strengthened royal authority. The Sultanate of Sulu, foundation, and early rulers. The Sultanate of Sulu was founded on November 17, 1405 or 1457, by Sharif ul-Hashim, a Johor-born explorer and Sunni religious scholar. His full regnal name was Paduka Mahasari, Maulana al-Sultan Sharif ul-Hashim. Also known as Sayyid Abu Bakr Abirin, he was a direct descendant of the Islamic prophet Muhammad from the Hashemite branch, giving the Sultanate immediate religious legitimacy throughout the Islamic world. Before the Sultanate's establishment, the island of Jolo was divided into 3 separate kingdoms. The founding story involves political intrigue and international diplomacy. In 1417, 3 kings from Sulu traveled to China to visit the court of the Yongle Emperor. Paduka Pahala, the East King and most powerful of the 3, fell ill and died during the journey. His eldest son Tumahan returned to Sulu to assume his father's throne, while 2 younger brothers stayed in China, where their descendants live today. This demonstrates that even before official founding, Sulu's rulers engaged in high-level diplomacy with the Chinese imperial court. Shariful Hashim arrived in Sulu and married Princess Dayang Dayang Paramasuli, daughter of local chief Raja Baginda. This marriage was not merely personal, but a political alliance merging Islamic authority with indigenous legitimacy. Raja Baginda had been a peaceful conqueror from Sumatra, who arrived in the 1390s, introducing centralized monarchical power and converting to Islam around 1402. He settled in Buansa, Sulu, establishing the foundation upon which the Sultanate would be built. The genealogical records clearly state that the Sultanate was established after Karim ul-Makhdum's missionary activities, followed by Raja Baginda's arrival with courtiers who were presumably Muslims. Most Sulu chiefs and leaders who accepted Raja Baginda as their ruler were already Muslims. The establishment of the Sultanate was based on consent, given by a generally Islamized population. If you're amazed by our ancestors' story, the Sultanates of Mindanao and Sulu, Islamic kingdoms of ancient Philippines, hit that like button, drop a comment about your favorite fact, and subscribe to join the HISTO-PH family. Territorial expansion of Sulu. The Sultanate of Sulu quickly grew into a formidable maritime power. The Sultanate gained independence from the Srungayan Empire in 1578. At its peak, it controlled islands bordering the western peninsula of Zamboanga in Mindanao to the east and Palawan to the north. The Sultanate's influence extended far beyond Philippine territory, controlling significant portions of northeastern Borneo, including areas that today form the Malaysian state of Sabah and parts of North Kalimantan in Indonesia. In 1703, according to some sources, the Sultanate of Sulu received North Borneo from the Sultan of Brunei, after Sulu sent forces to assist him against a rebellion. This territorial grant was not merely nominal. The Sultanate maintained actual administrative presence, collected tribute, appointed governors, and exercised legal jurisdiction over these vast areas. In 1746, Sultan Azim ud-Din Rafi, with Spanish assistance, carried out punitive expeditions around the Cebuku region against the Tidungs to reconsolidate power in Borneo. By April 1747, the expeditions were declared successful, and the chief of Tarakan declared allegiance to Sulu. Tausug traders from Sulu established permanent settlements in Tarakan and other Bornean ports, creating a network of overseas communities loyal to the Sultanate. By 1768, Sulu had become the center of a trade network extending from Mindanao and southern Palawan to the northern coast of Borneo and southward into the Celebes Sea. Jolo emerged as an important exchange center throughout Southeast Asia. Political structure and society in Sulu. The political structure of Sulu was sophisticated and hierarchical. At the top stood the Sultan, whose title combined Arabic and Sanskrit elements. The Sultan was not an absolute monarch, but ruled with advice from a council of datus, nobles, and religious scholars. Society was stratified into distinct classes: the royal family, the nobility including Mahalikas and datus, free commoners, and slaves who were often war captives from raids. The Sultanate followed the Ash'ari Aqidah theological creed, Shafi'i school of Islamic law, and incorporated Sufism. This particular combination shaped the Sultanate's religious character, emphasizing both orthodox Islamic practice and mystical spirituality. The Friday sermons regularly praised sultans for their knowledge of Sharia and Islamic jurisprudence. Notable sultans included Sultan Batara Shah Tengah, who ruled between 1596 to 1608, and was described in religious sermons as intelligent, knowledgeable in Sharia, honored by the community, and fond of cleanliness. Sultan Muwallil Wasit, known to Spaniards as Raja Bongsu, ruled from around 1610 to 1650. One of his daughters married Sultan Kudarat of Maguindanao, while another married the ruler of Buyan in 1657. The sermons characterized him as noble, knowledgeable in affairs of state, and noted his long and glorious reign. Sultan Shahab ud-Din ruled from around 1685 to 1710. He began collecting tribute from North Borneo territories as early as 1693. He killed Sultan Kahar ud-Din Kuda of Maguindanao in 1702, demonstrating Sulu's military power. He ceded Palawan to the Spanish government in 1705. The religious sermons praised him for being well-versed in both Sharia and Islamic jurisprudence. Economic power and trade in Sulu. The economic foundation of Sulu's power was maritime trade. During the 17th century, increased Western commercial activity in China resulted in rising Chinese demand for products from the sea, particularly trepang, or sea cucumbers, a popular ingredient for soups and medicines. Trepang fisheries developed throughout the Sulu Islands, and at one time, as many as 20,000 persons were employed in harvesting and drying sea slugs for export to China. Other valuable commodities traded with China included pearls from coral reefs around the islands, shark fin, rattan, birds' nests for soup, camphor, and mother-of-pearl. Sulu also exported forest products, beeswax, exotic woods, and spices. In return, the Sultanate imported Chinese porcelain, which became status symbols for nobility, silk, metal tools, and manufactured goods from across Asia. Between 1727 and 1763, the Sulu Sultanate sent at least 5 missions to offer tribute to the Chinese court, maintaining diplomatic relationships that had begun before the Sultanate's founding. These tribute missions were sophisticated trade expeditions. The Chinese tribute system allowed foreign rulers to bring large quantities of goods to China under the pretext of presenting gifts to the emperor, receiving generous gifts in return, and conducting private trade while in Chinese ports. The Sultanate maintained active trade relations with Brunei, Java, the Moluccas, and eventually with European powers, including the Dutch and British. The British East India Company established trading posts in Sulu territory. Between 1768 and 1848, foreign trade increased significantly, with Sulu harvesting more maritime and jungle products to trade for war supplies, cotton cloth, and opium brought by British merchants from Singapore. If you're still here, you're one of the rare few who truly care about the real origins of the Sultanates of Mindanao and Sulu, Islamic kingdoms of ancient Philippines. Not just the visuals, but the truth behind them. Military power of Sulu. The military forces of the Sulu Sultanate were formidable, particularly its navy. The Sultanate became known for maritime raiding campaigns. Sulu warriors used fast boats called lanong and garai, which were lighter than Spanish ships and could outrun them. These vessels were often armed with large cannons called lantaka. By the 18th century, Sulu controlled the Sulu seas and posed significant challenges to Spanish colonial settlements, forcing the Spanish to build forts and watchtowers along coasts. These raids served multiple purposes, capturing slaves for pearl diving, agriculture, and shipbuilding, acquiring plunder, demonstrating military power, and resisting Spanish colonial expansion. The economy of Sulu expanded based on slave raiding, and its export trade increased. Ships were outfitted in Sulu's harbors with munitions, and slaves were traded for cloth and firearms. Many captives came from the Visayan Islands, and the word Bisaya became a term for slave in these areas. However, the Sultan did not directly control all raiding groups. Many local leaders called datus led their own raids. The Sultanate's political structure was somewhat decentralized, with local datus maintaining considerable autonomy while acknowledging the Sultan's supreme authority. The Sultanate's naval dominance began declining when Spain acquired steam-powered warships in the 19th century, which could pursue swift vessels regardless of wind conditions. Culture and arts of Sulu. Sulu culture blended Islamic, Malay, and indigenous Filipino elements. The Sultanate had a long tradition of decorative arts known as ukil or okir. Ukil is the Tausug word for wood carving or engraving. The Tausug and Maguindanao peoples traditionally carved and decorated their boats, houses, and even grave markers with ukil carvings. These intricate geometric and floral patterns demonstrated high craftsmanship in Sulu society. Ukil motifs appeared on various clothing in the Sulu archipelago, emphasizing geometric patterns and flowing designs with floral and leaf patterns as well as folk elements. The Tausug also decorated weapons with these motifs. Various kris and barong blades had finely decorated handles, as well as blades covered in floral patterns. Bronze lantaka cannons also bore ukil patterns. The famous kris swords of Sulu, with distinctive wavy blades and ornate handles, were prized throughout Southeast Asia. The Sultanate maintained its palace, the Daru Jambangan, or Palace of Flowers, located in Mambung. The palace was made of wood and was destroyed in 1932 by a huge storm. This royal residence served as the administrative and ceremonial center where the Sultan held court, received foreign dignitaries, and administered justice. The Sultanate of Maguindanao. Foundation and Islamization. While Sulu dominated the seas, another powerful Islamic sultanate arose on Mindanao itself. The Sultanate of Maguindanao controlled the vast river valley systems of central Mindanao, particularly around the Pulangi River, also called Rio Grande de Mindanao, and at its height claimed authority over much of the island. The story of Maguindanao's Islamization begins with a legendary tale. Two brothers named Mamalu and Tabunawe lived peacefully in the Cotabato Valley on Mindanao. According to available historical sources, they were the eldest and youngest sons, respectively, of Sharif Marjan to Putri Paramaisuli, the daughter of Karim ul Makhdum, to a woman of Maguindanao. When Sharif Muhammad Kabungsuwan from Johor preached Islam in the area in the 16th century, Tabunawe converted, while Mamalu decided to hold fast to ancestral animist beliefs. The brothers parted ways, with Tabunawe heading to the lowlands and Mamalu to the mountains, but they vowed to honor their kinship. Thus, an unwritten pact of peace between Maguindanaons and the Territorial was forged through the two brothers. This founding narrative established the principle of peaceful coexistence between Muslim lowlanders and animist highlanders that largely persisted through centuries. Islam was likely introduced to Mindanao in the 14th or early 15th century, but the religion was not solidly established among the Maguindanao until about 1515. Sharif Muhammad Kabungsuwan also written as Sharif Kabungsuan or Muhammad Kabungsuan, born around 1520 to 1543, was a Muslim missionary from the Sultanate of Johor. According to Maguindanao genealogical records called Tarsilas, his father was Sharif Ali Zain ul Abidin from Arabia, and his mother, Putri Jusul Asikin, was the daughter of Sultan Iskandar Zulkarnain of the royal family of Johor. He arrived on Mindanao's shores around 1515. Sharif Kabungsuan preached Islam in the area, which had earlier been Hindu-influenced from Srivijaya times. He first settled in what is now Malabang and established himself as Sultan. He initially anchored at Natubakan, a site near the mouth of Maguindanao Pulangi, or river. Upon reports from locals under a certain Manumbali, Raja Tabunaway, Mamalu and some of their people went downstream to verify the new arrival. Sharif Kabungsuan quickly established his royal credentials with the Raja. Kabungsuan subsequently married into the families of local chieftains and established the Sultanate of Maguindanao, making him virtually Sultan of the whole island of Mindanao. The strategy of marrying into local ruling families created legitimacy by combining Islamic authority with indigenous royal lineages. He married many local princesses of the Maguindanao family ruling class in Dulawan and established the Sultanate seated in Dulawan. Shortly after Kabungsuan's arrival, the Sultanate was founded with its seat in the city of Cotabato, at the mouth of the Mindanao River. The choice of Cotabato was strategic. It sat at the mouth of Mindanao's largest river system, controlling access to the interior and serving as a natural trading hub where products from the highlands met maritime commerce. Expansion under Sultan Kudarat. The Sultanate of Maguindanao reached its apex under one of the most remarkable rulers in Philippine history, Sultan Muhammad Dipatuan Kudarat. The Sultanate expanded throughout the 16th and 17th centuries, reaching its summit of strength and influence under Sultan Kudarat, who reigned from about 1619 to 1671. Sultan Muhammad Dipatuan Kudarat was born in 1580, 9 years after the Spanish colonizers arrived in the Philippines. This great Muslim leader ruled over his Sultanate of Maguindanao for a span of 52 years. What made Sultan Kudarat exceptional was not just the length of his reign, but the breadth of his vision and the effectiveness of his resistance to Spanish colonization. Sultan Kudarat, whose name as a youth was Ula Untong, was one of the greatest sultans who controlled Mindanao. In his island sanctuary in Sulu, he was known as Sultan Nasiruddin. This dual identity reveals Sultan Kudarat's close relationships with the Sultanate of Sulu. At times he sought refuge there, demonstrating the interconnected nature of these Islamic kingdoms. Sultan Kudarat was a fearless fighter in defense of Islamic faith and Philippine liberty. He was brave, wise, and benevolent. His sense of justice was stern. He could speak many different languages, and he possessed a charm of personality which bound his subjects to him with hoops of steel. Even Spanish chroniclers of his time described him as an intelligent man and an excellent soldier. He led all Muslim efforts against the Spanish occupation and crushed the Spaniards' dream of conquering the southern Philippines. The Sultan's most famous act of resistance came when he united the Sultanates and Datus of Mindanao and Sulu in a confederation to oppose Spanish conquest. He formed the Mindanao-Moro Confederacy that successfully prevented Spanish colonization of the region for over 300 years. This confederacy included not just Maguindanao and Sulu, but also the Sultanates of Buayan, Lanao, and various Datu-controlled territories across Mindanao. In the early 1630s, Spanish Governor-General Juan Cerezo de Salamanca organized a formidable expedition to conquer the Maguindanao. The Sultan successfully repelled these assaults. In 1636, the Spanish sent another major expedition under Captain Juan de Chaves with thousands of soldiers. Sultan Kudarat's forces defeated them decisively. The most serious threat came in 1637, when Governor-General Sebastián Hurtado de Corcuera personally led an expedition with 80 ships and 2,000 Spanish and Filipino soldiers, plus thousands of native auxiliaries. This was one of the largest military operations the Spanish had ever mounted in the Philippines. They managed to capture the fort at Lamitan in 1637 and even reached the capital at Cotabato, forcing Sultan Kudarat to retreat inland. However, the Spanish could not hold their gains. Sultan Kudarat employed guerrilla warfare tactics, attacking supply lines and avoiding direct confrontation with the main Spanish force. The Spanish suffered from disease, lack of supplies, and constant harassment. By 1639, they were forced to withdraw. Sultan Kudarat had not defeated the Spanish in a single great battle, but had worn them down through persistence and strategic brilliance. Sultan Kudarat's famous words to his people during this crisis have echoed through Philippine history. Our ancestors' stories don't end here. They're just waiting to be rediscovered. Smash that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to join the HISTO-PH family for the next epic chapter of our forgotten history. And this story to related part 2 is coming soon.